Welcome everybody to When, How, Why, Record with your Quilt Magician. This is hosted by Tin Lizzie 18 and I'm Denise Applegate Schober, and I'm excited to bring you this class today because I think that record is probably one of the most important features of the Quilt Magician, but underused, because there are a lot of things that you can do with record, and I'm not sure if everybody's using them. So I thought it would be really good to do a webinar, a class with record. So ask yourself, and you can type it in the question box if you like, if you're on the live session. Have you used record to the fullest, or do you think you've used record to the fullest? Or what is it you're looking to learn more about record? Or maybe you've never even pushed the record button on your Quilt Magician. So it's really, really important that you know what the features are that you have. So I felt that going into record and showing you that information would become an important element. The other thing I wanted you to know, that you can save these recorded or you can discard, and we'll talk about that later, and I'll show you how to do it via video. So when to record? Well, I record quite a bit. I probably record a little bit for every quilt, and it really depends on what you're doing when you might record. Now, you might record when you have something in your head and you can't find it as a design, so you'd like to record that and have the ability to repeat that over and over again. So maybe it's a vision that you had, and you push the record button and you begin to do some swirls, or you begin to make a certain image that you have. Maybe it's butterflies. Maybe it's a sewing machine that's in your head. Maybe you saw something on a paper pattern, because paper patterns can be recorded. And paper patterns are great to be able to have something that's a visual, because maybe you're not an artist. Maybe you're not good at drawing. A paper pattern could also be clip art. So there are lots of different things that you could record. Maybe you've collected pantographs over the year and you have a lot of pantographs, and pantographs are paper patterns that can be turned into recorded designs for your Quilt Magician. So I have a few paper patterns myself, and I could record those and save them to use over and over again. Maybe you received a magazine in the mail today, or you picked one up and it had a great design in it, and you looked at that and went, wow, I would really like to turn that into a design for my Quilt Magician. You can do that also. Or books. Now books, I'm going to show you some samples. Books are great. I spiral bind my books. I take them to the local office supply store so I can spiral bind them, and I do that because I want them to lay flat. And to lay flat, it's important because I want to be able to get it underneath my foot in order to record it, or place it on my scanner in order to record it. I'm not the copyright police, but I'm here to say, please know the copyright rules for what you are recording and how you're going to use it. And a lot of the books will give you the information. Some of the pantographs have the information on the paper pattern, so just know your copyright. Maybe you'd like to record fabrics with large prints. So these are a few fabrics, and I made a quilt with the fabric on the left, and that piece there, I love the little bird with the vine underneath it. Well, that would be a perfect design to record. Now, I would do that by actually enlarging that image. I'd take the fabric to my scanner, I'd scan it, I'd print it out, and it's not necessary that it's printed in color. The higher the contrast, the easier it is to see. But I'd print it out, then I'd lay my golden threads paper over top. And when the golden threads paper is laid over top, I can trace the design how I'd like it. I also really like the orange flowers here. These flowers right here with this feathery leaf. I really like the look of that, and I think that that would be a nice block, or I could make it into an edge-to-edge design. Then this little fun button flower would be a very neat pattern. Now here's something to think about. If you're tracing the pattern out on golden threads paper, you want to trace it out the way you would stitch it. So you want to keep in mind that the pen is not going to leave the paper. So leave your pen down, think about it before you draw it, and maybe it takes you 2 or 3 times to air draw it over your paper pattern just to see how to get the direction correct. This bottom right hand corner one, I love a lot of little motifs in this. The butterfly, the flower, the paisley, and the hummingbird. So again, you have a few things to choose from. So here's a project that came with a paper pattern from the quilt show, and you could then record this little pantograph paper pattern that they gave you to be able to have it to quilt out over and over and over again. So again, if you can put it underneath the foot of the machine, you can record it. If you can lay it on the back on your pantograph shelf and use the laser, you can record it. So how do we record? Well, there are lots of ways to record, and the question I would have to ask before recording is, do you have software? Do you have software that allows you to edit the design? Okay? Because if you have software for your computer to manipulate designs, to change the size of designs, to make designs, then you would only have to do one repeat. So think about that. If we go back up here to this design, one repeat is actually from here, right here at this point, to here, because this design is mirrored. That's all that you would have to record, is that repeat if you have software. With the Quilt Magician, you can also record one repeat, but you want to be sure that the start and the stop line, the end, are on the same horizon line. That's really important, because when we tell the Quilt Magician to repeat, we want it to repeat across in rows and have those starts and stops to join. So one repeat becomes extremely easy to do, as opposed to each of us having to do the whole pantograph. The laser from the back of the machine, a lot of people use the laser from the back of the machine. I do not. I have a difficult time using the laser following something from the back because I want to see what I'm doing in the front. And I'm too far removed from what I'm doing. Although I can do it, my frame is on wheels. I can push it out from my wall and I can do it, and I keep practicing it, but it's not what I like. I like to do it from the front of the frame, so I'm going to show you how to do that today. But you could lay it in the back. Now, when you lay a design in the back on the pantograph shelf, a couple things are extremely important. You need to make sure that it's straight and square on the pantograph shelf. You need to make sure that your machine is straight and square on your carriages. That's really important, because when you record it, you want it to record straight. You want it to record even. And a lot of times I use painter's tape, or I use the Floriani pink embroidery tape, but I use tape to hold things in place so that I know it's straight, I know it doesn't move, and I know it's exactly where it needs to be. So there are some aids I'm going to show you that will help you to do that. Or you can record under the foot. So I drive watching the road. I don't drive watching the yellow line as I drive, and that's what it feels like when I'm in the back of the frame. So I'm used to watching the foot. I'm used to watching the machine and the needle move. And so it's much easier for me to do that from the front and follow things that I've put down. Now, under your home button on your Quilt Magician, that's the house, you have a free motion mode. And when you go to free motion mode, it will record and you can save it or not. You have many modes in your machine itself. You might have a basting mode, you might have a Lizzie mode, depending on what machine, what brand you have. You might have an auto stitch mode. The biggest thing to know is when you record, you really want to be in stitch regulated mode. It helps you to move smoother and freer. The machine does not need to be on though. Okay, so I've just told you need to be in stitch regulated mode, but you actually don't even need to have your machine on. I air record. I record over top of things without stitching. I call that air recording. So the machine doesn't need to be on to do that. And you can delete or you can edit. You'll need software to do extensive edit, meaning change the lines and things like that. But to join things together, you can use your edit on the Quilt Magician. Now, a couple of you have said that you do record and you really like record, and some of you have said that you've never used it. So this is really good to know because that way I'm hitting the right things. If you all have used it before, then I don't need to go through the basics. So we're going to go through the basics. And the basics are how to go from beginning to the end, how to lay out your pantograph, how to lay out your paper pattern, how to get to the record mode in your computer, in your Quilt Magician. So why would I record? Well, it simplifies things. It makes things easier. If I record one of my pantographs and one of the repeat of my pantograph, then I can put that pantograph away for another day. I don't really need to keep it out and I don't need to have it at my fingertips. So the pantograph is great because I can record it and make things easier for me. Now, if you don't have software and you're not quite sure about the record, you could practice just by recording the whole entire repeat. There would be nothing wrong with recording the whole repeat. As you get better, you're going to find practice, makes things better, and you're going to find that doing the one repeat and getting things straight up and lined up, you'll be able to simplify what you're doing. You have the ability to create your own designs. Maybe you saw carpeting that you took a picture of and you'd like to turn that into a quilting pattern and you don't have software. Well, you could draw that out on the golden threads paper, or you could send it into your computer if it's an image, print it out, and then have the ability to turn that into a line that you're going to do. Okay? Reinforcement. Well, the reinforcement is that it reinforces you with different things. It reinforces you knowing you can free motion. If you can record, you can free motion. If you can free motion, you can record. It also makes it more your quilt because you've made those designs for the quilt. Practice, practice, and then when you're done practicing, guess what? We're going to practice again. It does take practice. This isn't something you learn overnight on how to air record or free motion quilt. It is something that takes some time. So don't beat yourself up not knowing how to do this. It's practice. Now we're going to go to the frame, and I'm going to show you some tools, my favorite little tools here that I have when I record. We're also going to do some video and show you different techniques of how to use the record. And then we're going to also go in and go to the home button and go to the free motion mode. So Ramona says she loves the record. She uses it with paper pantographs, and she also records her own designs and saves them to perfect in the software. And you know what? The software, if you have software, does aid and allow you to do things and change things. But if you don't have software, you still can do this. Pamela says she's never ever used any of the record features. And you know what? That happens for some of us because we're not quite sure how to use them, Pamela. So we're going to see how to do that today. And Jill wants to know, what type of software do I recommend? You know, Jill, that's a great question. And there are lots of software programs out there. My recommendation always is with sewing machines and with software. You want to purchase it from where you're going to get classes and learn how to use it. The software, you have lots of options out there, so see what sewing machine dealerships are around you, and maybe I'll put on my blog what software programs will work with the Quilt Magician, because there are quite a few software programs out there that you can use, and I just feel that it's really important to get classes, and a few others have asked about the classes too and the software. Now, the first thing I want you to do if you're going to record is I want you to put an open toe foot on. So this foot I have in my hand is open. It replaces the foot that's on here so that I can see where I'm going. For me, that's extremely important. If you do not have this foot, you can get it from Tin Lizzie. It's $49.99. It's worth its weight, okay? Because that becomes important when you want to see where you're going. The other foot that I use for record is the ruler foot. And the ruler foot is a higher foot than the standard foot, and it doesn't have a back on it, meaning that the ruler will not get stuck. Well, why would I want a ruler foot? Because I record ruler work also. So not only can you record your pantographs and your paper pattern, but you can also record ruler work. So I have a plain block right here. This plain block right here. So I'm going to audition a few things that I might put in there and record. So these patterns, and I'm going to get some white paper here in just a second. These patterns are templates. And the templates allow me to record around them. So let's move the machine so the shadow of the machine is out of our way. There we go. So I can record any of these leaves. I can record the shape of the leaf. I can also take the leaf, and because of the way it's rolling, I'm going to flip it upside down. And you would do this on a flat surface. I would lay my golden threads paper on top of the leaf, and I draw the leaf that I'm interested in. So I'm going to draw this maple leaf right here. I have a Sharpie marker so that you can see the drawing. Okay, so there is my leaf. Now what I'm going to do with the leaf next is I'm going to turn it into an edge-to-edge design that I could record. So I'm going to draw another leaf over here. I just have turned it slightly. So there's 2 leaves. Now I'm going to decide the repeat. So what I'm doing is I'm going to fold my golden threads paper, and I could accordion fold this. So I could fold the length that I needed for my edge-to-edge design. Okay, so there's my leaf. I'm going to start the leaf. Let me cut this just so we can get it more manageable. Okay, I'm going to start the leaf and stop the leaf on the same horizon line. So I'm sewing, starting on the same point that I end on. So if my start is here, my end will be here. And that way when I join them together, they will join together. So I might come in and say, I'm going to do some swirls. And maybe I do the vein up the leaf. And then I'm imagining that I'm going up the leaf and doing the leaf itself. Then I could take that and come down here and do the same thing. Vein up. And then the leaf. And then this one might come back out this way and end where I started. That could be a very simplistic, some of you are saying not very simplistic, but a very simplistic leaf design. Then I will take that, if that's what I'm going to do for in here, or if that's what I'm going to do for across the quilt, and I would think it would be quite beautiful even as a block. Then I'm going to take it, and I'm going to take painter's tape, and I'm going to secure this down. So I want my points on the same horizon line, and I secure this down. Now it's secure. Then I'm going to take the sewing machine and I'm going to line it up to where it is. I have not gone into record mode or anything like that. All I'm going to do is move the machine to practice the movement. That's all I'm doing. I always practice the movement before I begin, because I want to train my brain on my direction. Now, a couple of you are asking, if I was putting this in the square, why didn't I make it to fit in the square? Well, because the Quilt Magician will resize it, I don't have to make it fit in the square originally. I can make it whatever size we'd like. Almost complete. And stop. So now I've just practiced doing this piece. Then I would prepare to get everything set up so that I now can record it. So a couple things that we're going to do to get there. Okay, the first thing is that we're going to go to the robot. Okay, and we're going to go to new pattern box. So we need to make a pattern box. And we're going to make the pattern box my purple lines of this piece. Now, when you make a pattern box, the first spot is the baseline. So the left corner of the baseline. So I touch the plus, touch the plus, plus, check. Now I have the design. You can't see it, but I have the design box on my screen. Then I'm going to go in and look at this. Can you see that the design box is tilted? That means when I place that piece on the frame, I did not place it squared. That becomes really important. So you have a few options to look at that. As you move this, you can see your line numbers move. So what I would do is I would place this here looking at the X and the Y line numbers. Those become important elements when I'm lining something up because I want to make sure it's straight. So I would write these numbers down on my dry erase board. 53.39 is X, 10.99 is Y. Then I would bring this over here and I need to make sure that the Y is 10.99 and I would tip this so that it would be exactly where it needs to be. Okay, so now I've just reset my box. I'm going to go back to the home button. I'm going to go to the pattern box and I'm going to adjust the current. So I'm going to adjust the current so that I can reset what I just did. And now when I bring this forward, look at the difference on that box versus the original. That's sometimes where we miss the mark, is making sure that everything that we're doing starts out straight. Once it starts out straight, then the record will become much easier. If I go to Home, Free Motion, notice that it says Start and Save. Before you start and before you save, you want to make sure that you are starting at the point that we listed as our start. Oh, I just shifted this. Okay, there we go. So our start was over here. So now I can push the start button. Notice my machine is not on and I can record. It will record. Now, let's go back to home. Let's verify our dots again because I moved my paper. I'm going to turn the light back on and see if there we go. It's still too bright. Thought I'd try it for you. Okay, I've got a couple questions coming in and I'll go back to that in just a second. But you can see that I can air record, just make sure that things stay straight. Now, this purple painter's tape is not as good as the pink embroidery tape. Some of the tape sticks better, but for the lesson this morning, that's what I had at my fingertips, so that's what I'm using. So that's why it shifted. Some of you are asking about the painter's tape. The purple is the less tactile of the painter's tape. The ruler foot Kate is asking what the ruler foot price is, and the ruler foot is $49.99 also from Tin Lizzie. Lynn's asking when I'm saying that the machine doesn't have to be on, I'm saying the needle doesn't have to be active. Actually, I'm saying the machine doesn't have to be on at all. The robotic actually moves the frame. The machine's just sitting on it. So you can have just the robotic on without the machine on. And so either way. So right now, my machine is turned on, but it's not active here. Okay? So if I go back to view my pattern, you could see the machine is here. Now the machine is on. Either way, the machine does not have to be on. So I can literally go behind my machine, shut it off, and air record. It's a different concept, but for me it works well. I can also stitch through this paper. I can stitch through the golden threads paper, and I can remove it when I'm done. And my favorite new tool is the seam ripper with the eraser on the end, because that eraser removes the golden threads paper from the stitching, and it makes it really, really nice to be able to do that. Teddy is asking if I have my robot engaged, meaning the straps engaged, and I do. I do have the track engaged so that it will track what I'm doing. So most definitely I want that tracking system to follow what you're recording. And record mode, if we go back in here, so go to the home, go to free motion, this is your record mode. This is where you can record. And so if you record, if I push start, I'm going to shut the machine off again. Oh, I have to get back out of here first. Okay, if I shut the machine off, I just want to show you something here. If I record these numbers in the bottom corner, as I move, those numbers are also going to move. And that's what's recording. It's the movement of the carriage. So the smoother you are, the better it will record. So let me just show you a couple other ways to record, and then we'll go through the process. So I showed you the golden threads paper. It comes on rolls, 12, I believe it's 12, 18, 24 inch. We could record a pantograph also. So here's the pantograph. Let's look at it. I would only record one repeat. So where is that one repeat? You could choose where it was. You could choose that the repeat starts here and ends here. You could choose that the repeat starts here and ends here. What's nice about this specific pantograph, it's from Golden Threads, is it also gives me the nesting distance. So if I record it this size, it gives me the nesting distance, and it gives me my turn of a corner for a border. So instead of it being just an edge to edge, this could then be a border print. If I was making it an edge to edge, I would try to make my edge end somewhere where this flower was, so that I don't have all this extra stuff that I have to have off of my quilt. I don't want this big gap here. So if I was recording this one as an edge-to-edge design, I might start right here. So when I do this, I then go in and I mark and I mark and I measure it all out with a ruler to make sure that it's on the same horizon line. I do the same line up, the way I line it up, to make sure that it's straight on the frame. And then I go in and I record the one repeat, because with the Quilt Magician, I can tell it I'd like 10 repeats across, 3 repeats down, however many will fit into that space. So you only need to record one repeat. If you look, let's look in here a second. I'll give you a very good example of what comes in the Quilt Magician that is one repeat and how you can see this. Let's go back to the home. Let's add a pattern. This clam is one repeat. So if you were doing clamshells or fancy clamshells, you would only need to repeat one or record one, because when we go into edit and we go to repeat, we can tell it how many across we want and how many down we want, and it will fill that space. So that's why the one repeat really breaks it down smaller than what most of us knew we needed to do. So if I'm doing the flower that's down below here, one repeat, that's it. It's all I'm going to record to get the design to be exactly the same all the way across and get her done. You might also have stencils. So here's a stencil. Now I have two options with the stencil. Because the stencil is made of a plastic, it might not lay real flat on my fabric. So if that happens to you, then you're going to want to go in and pounce the chalk across it so that you can have the design on there without you having the plastic, because the foot tends to hit the plastic, especially the open toe foot, because it gets little hook happening on the stencil. So I usually stencil it and then record it. A couple things about stencils. Some of them, not all of them, have a little key. This key tells you how to get the direction that you need to go. I really like this. Also, I write on my stencils because I want to know which corner is my right upper and my right lower so that I can get back to what I'm doing. So I've recorded this one, and I love this design. I've stitched it out quite a few times, and I've recorded the serpentine, and I've recorded the feather, and I've recorded them both together. So just another option of recording is a stencil. These are painting stencils that I use when I do art, and so I've recorded these a few times also. I also cover up sections that I don't need with painter's tape. So if I was going to put this on my scanner, it will only scan the open area that I want, and I put a color piece of paper underneath that so that you can see it. And here's another one. This stencil could be recorded. Some fun flowers. Then you can get patterns in boxes. So this is a box package of patterns. I don't know how many they're up to now, but I have quite a few of them. A couple things about this: it gives you a book inside, and inside of that book it gives you lots of tips. It talks to you about how to use golden threads paper. There's a whole instruction section on that about marking, the different marking materials, and then how to use the designs. So this design here, let the camera focus. This design here, you have a block, a border, a corner, and an edge-to-edge design with most all of these. And they come in 20 or 30 designs in each packet. My favorite way to get them because I have all the companions to go along with it. And then my favorite magazines, I have marked where I want to go and do things inside of my magazines. And I also have taken magazines apart here where I don't want to keep the magazine because of space. So I just take out what I need from that magazine. I've also talked to you about recording from books. So this is a book I took, had it spiral bound, and now it will lay flat on my scanner or underneath my foot. So this book now lays underneath the foot. So I'm giving you a lot of options here. Hopefully you'll find one that's going to work for you. I've got a few more to show you also. Pamela would like to know, when you do go to record, which mode and how do you know you're in the right mode? So if I go back to home, and let's just view the pattern where we were, okay? Actually, we'll go back to this one. Okay, so we're going to view the pattern where we were. So if I go to the home and I go to free motion right now, it doesn't allow me to see what mode I'm in. But if I go to my machine right now and go to the home of the machine, I can see I'm in Lizzie mode. Okay, so everything's right there in the home. When I go back to the robotics and I go to home and free motion, you are in the Lizzie mode. Now you can go back and forth from here. So if you wanted to be in the idle mode as opposed to the Lizzie mode, which is still a regulated mode, you can do that. So you can toggle back and forth between all of those. Lynn wanted to know what I pushed to see my pattern box. So if I go back to View Pattern, my pattern box is always there, whether I have a pattern in it or not. When I have things that I'm doing in a layout, you can see I have an arrow here and an arrow here. So that's going to take me to the pattern box. This is the pattern box that we drew for the square that was up here. So it comes up on my screen once I select making a pattern box, but you have to tell it you want to make a pattern box. Okay, a couple more things I'd like to show you. You can also get pantographs in packages like this or like this. Some of these are whole cloth quilts. This particular one, you can stitch through this paper. This one, you do not stitch through the paper. So I tend not to stitch through my paper. I tend to just record it and then put these away. I have a filing cabinet full of pantographs and things, so I put them in that filing cabinet so I can get back and forth. So for those of you that have recorded, what have you recorded? What has worked for you? What have you found you liked? I've showed you some of the things that I've recorded from, but maybe you have other options that you could record from. There's one other thing that I wouldn't be in my sewing room with recording without, and that is a grid. And this grid is a plastic grid. It comes as a roll like this. It's 36 by 36, and literally I can draw on this with a wet erase marker, put it on my fabric to see how my design looks, and then record what I've drawn out. So for me, this grid has really simplified also my recording and allowed me to do much more than what I've ever done before. So a couple of you have recorded stencils, which is good, and they're not the easiest to record. the stencils, that's why I stencil it on with the pounce and then I record it. And stencils, you can get those various places. There are quite a few stencil companies out there that sell specifically just stencils. The one that I showed you, I believe, is a Golden Threads. Yes, the feather with the cable, that's a Golden Thread stencil. Some of my other stencils I get at the art store. Because I buy paints and things, I always look at the artist stencils and look at those to see what, you know, stencils they have, because they're a little out of the box for a quilter. And a couple of you are saying that you've attempted to record, but you were shaky. So here's what I would say to everyone. You have to find what makes you relax, okay? Most of the time when I record, I'm seated. I do not use my backing bar, or my batting bar, excuse me. I don't use that batting bar. So I have a chair that goes to a higher height, and I sit when I record, because then I can drop the handles down. Let me move this stuff out of our way. I can drop the handles down on the machine, and my hands are very low and very easy to get to, so I can move these where I want it, if I want these in like this. And then I also have micro handles that go around my foot, and so I use those, but my hands are flat. The more relaxed you can be, the easier it becomes. Yes, the shakiness is something that happens to all of us in the beginning. I tend to listen to music. I dance with my machine when I free motion quilt. I just find that it's easier if I do that. Whereas some of you, you know, might find something else. I talked to one lady, she does yoga before she free motions. But you have to find what makes you relax, because if we can't relax, we get really stiff and we have a fear factor that happens. So let's go in and set a box. And I'm actually going to just take the thread off of my machine so I can show you how to do this without stitching through my fabric, meaning stitching design. So I'm going to go reset this box. So the very first thing you need to do is you need to set your pattern box. So I'm going to go up to the home, and I'm going to go to pattern box, and I'm going to add a pattern box. Okay, so I'm going to start in the lower left hand corner because my baseline is here, and I'm going to push the plus, and my foot is inside the seam lines because I want to stitch in the seam line. So there's my box. Now I'm going to go to record. I'm going to have my machine on this time. I'm going to go to home, and I'm going to go to free motion. And at this point, I'm going to push the start. Now what's going to happen is, and I'll bring the machine closer so that you can see it, but what's going to happen is that when I push start, I'm going to stitch, and I'm going to record what I'm doing, but I don't have to. I can pause because it's just recording a line, okay? It's not recording the stitching, although it is. It's recording a line. So the pause in the line is okay. If you feel better at pausing and putting the needle in the needle down position as opposed to needle up, then you can go ahead and do that. So you have a few options. So I put the needle in the needle down position, and then if I stop, I can do that. Now, when you save, a couple things about saving in the mode. So if we were to tell it to save, it will automatically come up and you name the design. it is saving it to the SD card inside of your Quilt Magician. So you have a USB stick and you have an SD card, and it's saving it to the SD card that is inside the Quilt Magician. So if I save this as number 1 and told it OK, it's now saved. To retrieve that, you have a few things. You could view pattern, but that's going to take us to what we had on the screen. You can add a pattern. That's going to take us to where our designs are, and our designs are saved on the SD card. So lots of questions coming in. Let me just go here and see what we've got going. So Angela, I think that helped you with getting to the box, drawing the box. That's telling the machine and the Quilt Magician where we're going to quilt. So if I put my needle up, my quilting space is the full length of my frame. My box is where I'm stitching. Why is that important? Because if I go back to this robotics, and I view the pattern, I have a few patterns that I've used for the quilt that I have on the machine, on the frame. And that way, when I save that layout, I can get back to each one of those designs. If I were to walk away from this today, I could still come back and I'd be able to quilt the same design that I stitched here and the same design that I stitched here because I saved it as a layout. I could still record within that layout and get back to those things. The plastic grid that I showed is something that Tin Lizzie will be carrying, but it's a great piece. I have it that's gridded out in squares, and I have that's gridded out as a round so that I can do feathers. The copyright, Jane's asking about the copyright. And the copyright, you really need to know that. So a lot of these have copyrights on them. So this says it's copyrighted by Golden Threads. I know Cheryl Barnes, who used to be the owner of Golden Threads, and when I started doing the quilting, she really gave me a lot of instructions and taught me a lot. And I had asked, was there any reason that I couldn't record these designs for digital purposes in a robotic system? What was the rule about that? And here's what she said about the Golden Thread things when she was in the company. She said, if you own the book, the pantograph, or the stencil, you can record them. The stickler gets when you want to sell what you've made with these recorded designs. And so some of these designs have now been produced into digital images that can be used for sale. But it's really something that you guys need to do the research on the copyright, because there are so many copyright rules out there, or laws out there, that I do not know them all. So my question to you is, how many of you are going to go try to record now? See, even this leaf and this print here, I've recorded. I think that record allows us to really open things up, allows us to just have the more. And don't be afraid of it, because you don't have to save it. You close it and start again. That's delete. But it's as simple as going in, touching the home, touching free motion, and saving it. Now there's the little doodle that I did. So you can go in, record, and save. And if you don't like what you saved, then do it again. Coloring books are great fun, Teddy. I used to do a lot of things with the coloring books. Again, watch your copyright on those because coloring books are copyrighted. But yes, coloring books are a great way to try simple designs. And, you know, in order for all of us to be able to try recording, we have to start somewhere. And that somewhere might be different for every single person. And so you're going to find what works best for you and what's easiest for you. Now, for me, as I said, I record a lot, but I've been practicing it for a while, and I've tried simple things and I've tried more extravagant things. And, you know, the more extravagant things would be things like Dover Publications. They're great resources for designs, and their copyright, I believe it's 25%. You need to change it 25%. And so, you know, they have all kinds of books and CDs and downloadable designs and things like that. So, you know, check those out too. So Joanne wants to know about the X and Y line. So we see here, if I was checking, and it works a couple different ways, Joanne, if I was checking to see if my quilt was straight on the frame, if it's creeped or not, creeping happens on the frame, I see, let me turn this just slightly, 56.15 by 13.40. As I move this across to another section of that line, my Y should be exactly the same as here if I'm straight on the frame. If my Y has changed, that means that things are shifting or I need to adjust, and once I adjust, then that tells me if I'm correct or not. So as I move across here, I can see that that number is not changing. You know, if I keep the needle right at the fabric, I want that number to stay the same. Well, the same thing happened when I put this design that I drew down. Okay, so let's put it back on the frame. If I'm checking to see if this is straight when I'm recording, I'm going to put the foot on my start dot, and it says it's 12.55 for the Y. Okay, the Y is what goes forward to backward. If I go all the way across and keep that there, it says it's 12.88, which means it's off. So here's literally what I do when I'm doing this on my own. And I'm very particular on making sure that this works, okay? I put this here, that's 12.55, and I put a pin in it to hold all of that in place exactly where it's at. And it's just a small pin, nothing fancy, and I go across to here, and that's 12.48. So I have to get it to 12.55. So I slightly move this. I'm at 12.55. Because I have the pin only in one spot, I can rotate this to make it now straight. Now when I record that, it's going to be straight. So I'm making this start and the stop on the same Y line. And it takes a little practicing to do it, but it works quite well. Ramona says that she relaxes with a glass of wine when she's free motion quilting. And again, everybody's going to find what works well for them. Lynn said she tried drawing her own and she drew the pattern box, but when she started, the design wasn't inside the box, it was elsewhere on the screen. and she wants to know what she did wrong. You did nothing wrong. You may not always see it on the screen because you might be, and I don't know the answer of, there's too many variables, but you may have been panned out. You can touch the zoom or the pan in. These only work, the zoom all or pan in only work to put things full size on screen, not to zoom in to line things up. And that question came up on another class. They're only to bring you into where you're working, not to fine tune something. So keep practicing, because it will work. How about words? Teddy wants to know, can you record words? You sure can. The first few quilts I ever did, I recorded love letters to my grandchildren. And I wrote to practice my free motion because that was in my head. And I wrote little notes all over the whole quilt. I did 2 cheater quilts on the frame at the same time. And they were very excited to get them. And you know what? They didn't know that it was, my first time recording or my second time recording, and they loved them. So practice, practice, practice. Try recording. See if you can, get a few things recorded. And as always, happy quilting, everybody.